Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening and giving up your Thursday evening to join Geoff, Ryan and Mark, or Nevs as I'm going to call him this evening. We're going to be discussing how we can or might be able to deliver memorable matchday experiences. We're going to kind of split the webinar into 3 chapters. So the chapter 1, we're going to really focus on what you might consider within your matchday plan. Then chapter 2, we're going to dive into around making in-game decisions that will support enjoyment and engagement for your players. And then we're going to finish up with chapter 3, where we're going to really hopefully dive in around the impact that your communication and behaviours will have on others.
It's very quickly you realise it is about the children's development at the younger ages, and you always want your teams to win. You absolutely want your teams to win. I don't know anybody that sends a team of kids out to lose deliberately or to not help them. It's just then shifting your focus to help the children, help your players develop as they play, solve problems as they play, thrive as they play, and really thrive in the environment and learn to compete, understanding what competing is. And we rarely talk about coaching the hard stuff. When you lose, you've got to lose magnanimously, and helping children understand about losing. Also, when we win, we don't get in people's faces. We win well. We understand that we're empathetic. We've lost, so I think the match day is such a profound experience, can be such a profound experience for the children as they work out the things they've been working out in training. But also, that social transfer of understanding winning, losing, understanding how to compete, win fairly, and lose magnanimously.
I think especially where I coach, where it's a decent level of the women's game, we are performance result focused because we need the 3 points to stay up or to look at promotion. But I want the girls to be doing that with a smile on their face. So I want them to be win, losing or drawing it, enjoying it. So sometimes you might lose a game, but if the girls have enjoyed it and they feel they've made a real impact and they've had a good go, that for me is massive success. I'm going to jump now into that first chapter, just around considering what goes in your match day plan. And I guess we've all spoken about it previously, but having that plan will really allow you to make better informed and more effective decisions on your match day. I'm going to come to you first, Geoff. I've got there around equal game time, but do we mean fair game time? What should it be?
The short answer is, for me now, and back then I was probably pushing for it but didn't get it over the line, I think it's equal and fair. So what some of the things we used to do, we would often have a game on the side or an extra game. So we would try and have a conversation with the opposing team. How many have you got? How many do we think we'll have? Can we get formats that might be a 7-a-side and a 4-a-side, or 2 7s? And I think in academy there is that flexibility. Some clubs didn't want to do it. Some clubs would just want a lot of subs watching. If that was the case, we would probably have a 2v2 on the side of a 7v7 or 9v9.
If you've got the space and the time, given 2 games, you take everyone. However, I understand that facilities aren't the same for everybody. But the amount of work that's been done, and with the launch of Future Fit, I think we're running out of excuses to keep kids at home. If we've got 10, we can play a 5 and a 3 and have 2 running in and out of the 3v3, because 3v3 carries a different physical punch to a 5. That would be best practice. But this whole thing centers around the age-old thing of picking the phone up and having a relationship with the other coach and saying, look, we've got this many, how many have you got? Right, great, what can we do? Let's do this. Because fundamentally, everything is about the children. Everything is about them enjoying and playing. And I don't adhere to the children standing there are learning by watching. They might be, but they'll learn far more and enjoy the game by playing it. So in my head, if I've got 10, I take 10 and I play 2 games.
Whoever happened to be on the bench at the time, their challenge was to actually go around to the opposition substitutes and actually ask them if they wanted to play a little 3v3 or 3v2, which, sometimes it took them 5 minutes to go get up the courage to go and do it. But then, and sometimes the other team might say no, but it was brilliant when they went over and they were just like, oh yes. And then they set up their own little game, didn't need me to facilitate any of that. And I actually had one occasion that just thought about that, one of the girls, it was their turn to go on the pitch and they were like, oh no, I'm loving this 3v3 over here. Can I stay on here for a little bit longer? And I think, there's lots of things to consider, but ultimately it's about, like this whole webinar is about giving them the best match day experience. And, something you said, Katie, earlier that I think, resonates with me and is ultimately what tonight's about is, you want every player, whatever age group it is, whatever environment, you want them to go away from a match day and they can't wait to the next training session, or they can't wait for the next match day. And I think if we've done that, ultimately that's success.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is actually about bringing people along with you, because we've all been there where you're trying to do every job on your own. You like historically, you're filling the water bottles, you're trying to talk to the ref, you might have to put the nets up, and you've got a group of players there, children, who want to help. Like the classic example is putting the kit out. So I go into some clubs and the coach has done everything for them and it's really nicely laid out, and actually for me that's part of them learning about looking after their equipment. And the same at the end of the game. I'm working with a coach at the moment who's working like higher up now in an older age. Sorry, not higher up, Nev's is going to tell me off there, but in a different age group. And we still want the children, the players, to respect the kit and equipment. And I'll talk later on about a particular club, but fundamentally use the parents if it's grassroots. It might be that you use the parents for some stuff even in academies, but you've got a group of people who can help you set stuff up, kit, equipment, people. And even I think the warm-up bit, I always remember we played a particular team and the coach I was chatting with sort of about 15 minutes before the game started, a little bit away from the pitch, and I said to him, are you the only coach today, or have you got someone with you? He said, no, it was an under-14 group. He said, they know what they're doing. It was May time. He's had them all year. I trust them to warm up.
It's almost like the coaching on match day sometimes became the last thing on the list. Mm-hmm. Actually being a coach was the bottom of the pile because of everything else that needed to be done. And so I think if you're fortunate to have people around you who, whether that's assistant coaches or whether it is informally, parents who might be able to help out a bit, the more pressure that people can take off you so that you can actually help the players in a football context, then I think the better. So for me it's about creating those routines, building those relationships to ultimately help you, which in turn is going to help the players and give them the most memorable matchday experience.
We need to do something more appropriate for children, I think, and then an age and stage appropriate warm-up, in my opinion, would be a better approach. In terms of variety or structure, I get the pros and cons of structure. I also understand that sometimes the kids have travelled for 2 hours on the bus and they're bored, or they're very tired and lethargic, or they've eaten too many sweets, or whatever it is. So I think variety can be is really beneficial for the children. The benefit of having those particular pre-match games, and we used to rotate them, was the kids could download, it's this game, I'm doing this. It's this game, I'm doing this. There was no explanations. There was no learning the new game. It was like, it's this, bang, and we're off. It's this game, brilliant. And straight away they're thinking and processing what they're going after. They'd always involve the keepers. They're not off over there doing their thing. It'd be with us. So it's a team thing. It's not leaving them out of it. It's socially, we're part of this. And it was just really easy for the kids because they could set them up themselves. In my head, I think variety is really important for foundation phase children and children in general. But I completely understand routine and structure for particularly performance end of the spectrum.
Power of three, like 3 points maybe. Yeah. So you're not giving them information overload, and again that might be relative to their age and stage and how much they can take on board, but I quite like that power of three myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Geoff, if I was to come to you now and just say around, right, I've just mentioned their age and stage, so how might we dial up or dial down the information that we're sharing in that team talk?
Yeah, I think the age and stage may affect it, but I think in principle, less is more. Mm-hmm. On the match day, I think trying to give them too much information an hour, half an hour, 2 minutes before kickoff, on the whole, may disrupt or challenge their thinking. I do know of players who want absolutes and want answers and want certainty of a lot of stuff, and that might be an individual conversation on a tactics board if they're still asking questions. But ideally, it's to trust that your training practices and your messages in a session during the week can then transfer.
And often I would suggest team talks. How much can you give to the kids in terms of, go on then, what are our aims today? What have you noticed? If you played these guys before, what do you think we need to do today? Getting the kids to solve the problems, getting the kids to engage with the problems in front of them and the game in front of them. So I think simple and little is best, if I'm really honest, but making sure we've nurtured and nourished the ones that need it.
I think that leads us really nicely now into some of those stuff around the nuances during the game. So if we were to dive into this, just a little bit around like observation, obviously we've got our brilliant 6 capability tool. So for those of you that are on the call and haven't seen this is a great tool for you to notice what your players are doing well within the game and maybe what they need some more support within the game. So I've already got there around like identifying where your players are having success and where they might need a little bit of support. So Nev, do you have, I guess, maybe just 3, or even if it's just 1, like a key tips for coaches on the call around like what to look for and how to observe?
There's a couple of things. If you find yourself commentating, pass, dribble, shoot, score, like every word coming out of your mouth is associated to the game and where the ball lies. You are only ever coaching in the past. Do you see what I mean? So if you're coaching in the past, you're not helping. You're just providing more noise, more background information. You're probably telling the child what they already know or do, and you might also be shutting down their decision making. So if you find yourself doing that, take a breath, drink some water from your bottle, and then allow yourself to disengage emotionally from the game a little bit. Try and develop a method like your driving test. On our driving test, what did the instructor always ask us to do every couple of seconds?
Check your mirrors.
Check your mirrors. It's the same in coaching. So as we're watching, if we just find ourselves doing what TV teaches us to do, and that's to watch the ball, we're missing all the beautiful stuff around it. So if you can find and devise a methodology that helps you look at the ball, where your keeper is, defender, midfielder, right, good, what's going on next? Because you know almost what's going to happen next, but you might be you might be missing something that's going off the ball, away from the ball, your keeper, that you could be helping the player with there and then. How do we get them to solve problems? Kids absolutely want to solve. If they're given the chance to have a voice, they will do. And how we do that. So, the old classic horseshoe, 15 players, right? Who wants to speak? And then the same 3-4 people always speak because they're confident. But actually, this player here who never speaks has got a brilliant idea, but just doesn't feel like saying it. So splitting him into pairs and shares, like 2s and 4s, so that we can talk to each other and then convey back, or giving game problems as they come off. Right. So as you're having a drink, go and have a drink, because the very last thing kids need is an adult straight in their ear. So as you're having your drink, 90 seconds, have a think, one thing they're doing well, one thing we need to improve on, do it in units, or you two go together, or, and I'm sure the coaches out there would do that very creatively. But set them a task that they can talk about and exchange, give them a time limit to do it so they're focused, let them drink so they can chill out and process the game. And then once all the emotions are gone, we can go on then. What have you said there? And by the way, I've seen in the chat some coaches saying they write 3 or 4 points down. Brilliant. Because if that child says the thing you've written down, well, what a great opportunity that is to go and encourage that learning.
So in international deaf football, those who have hearing aids, they can't wear those while they're playing. So obviously, that communication is vital. It's a little bit easier in the women's deaf game because we play, as an international team, we play futsal. So obviously it's a smaller court, so it's a little bit easy. The interpreters can get messages across from the coaching staff. You can see they're really simple in terms of substitutions. Holding up the name, in terms of getting players on and off. Probably another one to mention, which is really key, is like the blind squads. In terms of as the players who aren't on the pitch at the time. Obviously, it's helping them to understand what's happening on the pitch, because they can't, visually see what's going on, but you want them to go on and affect the game. So that communication with those players, and, your MDT having that role to be communicating what's accurately going on in the game, so that when they come on, they can have that impact.
We're now looking at final whistle's gone, game's finished. Nevs, how do we actually structure what we do in that little debrief after the match? I guess, do we link it to what our intended outcomes were and what our purpose is?
It's still a game, isn't it? But yes, I think. I've got really careful here. I think again, little is better. The big debrief on the side of the pitch probably isn't the one, but getting the players to think about something they contributed to the game, getting the players to think about a good moment, getting the players to think about a moment where they perhaps struggled, and getting the players to share with a teammate those things, or ask a teammate those things, could be really powerful. But often it's possibly the car journey on the way home that probably needs more attention, if I'm really honest, because the kids will know what they've done or haven't done. And you've always got the opportunity, certainly in the academies, to pick it up in training in the week and have those quiet car seat journeys as you're walking with them to the pitch or around the pitch. But I think as little as possible, but a chance to debrief with each individual if they need it. Some might need attention again, picking off the ones that need attention, but getting the children to think about their performance ultimately. And we used to have really 3 clear messages for the parents. It was like, what did you think you did well? What was your hardest moment of the game? What was the best moment of the game? That's it. And the 4th question would be, what do you want to eat? Off you crack. So the car journey becomes this really nice, it's because mine weren't when I was a kid. They weren't great.
The biggest reason for all of this, I think, is it allows the player to process a bit internally and externally before they get the parent conversation. And that's the powerful bit for me.
What could this look like within the grassroots game?
Yeah, I've seen lots of examples. Sometimes probably the most common one I've seen is the opposition choose the player of the match. Now, obviously, you're getting a kind of a neutral perspective on it, but what I tend to find is that, they tend to, because they're just seeing your players for the first time, tend to pick the technically best player. Now, if you've got a technically really a player who might be technically more advanced than some of the others, then they might end up getting man of the match every week or player of the match every week, or the game every week, and that'll be simply because they've stood out from a technical point of view. So other ways I've seen it done, I've seen a players vote, doing an anonymous vote, to do that. Parents sometimes I've seen do that. Something that I've done one of my clubs as well was that the players shared the objectives or the game plan with the parents before. So during the warm up, a couple of the players would just go up to the parents on the other side of the pitch and share, right, these are the things that we're going to be trying today. So then the players the parents are familiar, and like Neville talked about there, in terms of framing the conversations on the way home.
It's not always about technical ability, it's what else do players have to offer. I think that's really, really important.
What if we didn't just have a player of the match? So what if certainly club I used to be at, we used to emphasize defending. So we used to have one, and I can't take credit for this, it was one of the part-time coaches, absolutely Smithy, what a ledge, come up with tackle champ. So the kids got to vote who was tackle champ. Then we had Fortress Awards. So if a keeper kept a clean sheet, you get the Fortress Award this week, lad. Like just brilliant. And you can shift it on the emphasis of your learning or what you value.
I guess if we're just to wrap up this chapter, which will then allow us to actually have really short kind of 2nd and 3rd chapter, because we've had some great conversations here. It's probably now just wrapping up now what that review and reflection looks like. I think we spend so much time looking at the game, looking at the players. We probably don't have much chance to look at ourselves sometimes.
Yeah, I think after the game, you reflect on lots of stuff. You can reflect on your players, but also reflect on yourself. So in our world, we're doing coach development, and we want the coach to reflect on how were they? Did they connect with specific players? Did they have targeted players? Did they talk too much, too little? Could they see the in-game problem? I think this is a really big one for us, about in-game observations of what's going on. Then they've got a conscious decision. Do I help them solve it in the moment, or do I leave them with it? But yeah, really reflecting. And one of the models is, it's the what, so what, now what? So yeah, what's happened, and it's a descriptive, we did this, we did that, but so what did it mean? And then the now what am I going to take and change in my behaviour going forwards, really?
Hopefully some of these conversations tonight will really support you with what you do in your environments going into the next season. But this is a sheet as well for you to download, share it with parents as well. Obviously we want to bring them as part of the process. Nevs, is there a right time?
That is the skill of coaching. What a question. If we knew that, I think we all might be taking the England team or other England teams. But like that's this craft of the coaching, isn't it? And Dick Bate, a mentor of mine, and probably many others on this call, would say, step back and smell the grass. Mm-hmm. Like the need for emotional intelligence in coaching is paramount. The need to be able to go, if I say something now, that poor child is going to explode. He's going to, or if I just find a way of getting out, how even like when you talked about the subs or Ryan, you talked brilliantly about getting information to the player across the other side of the pitch. How we do that, someone going, "Oi, come here," or someone going, "Brycey, 2 seconds, quick, I need to talk," is totally different. So I think the smell of the grass, Dick would call it, stand back. What do they need? When do they need it? And how can I give it? That is the craft of coaching right there.
That's only one piece of the jigsaw, and it's making sure that, ultimately we're developing them as people, because, even in the, academy environments, PGA, RTC environments, that it's only a small percentage who'll become professional footballers. What we want to do is make sure that we're developing them into really good people and developing skills which are going to help them whatever they go on to do in life.